Hello everyone, I thought I'd do a video on the Accu-TAC bipods that I use for sort of long range shooting, PRS, rimfire competitions, all of that. So in front of you I've got two models here from Accu-TAC. We've got the FD4, which is a sort of a smaller option, not quite as much leg extension, and then obviously they're all panable, Arca, etc. They just click in. And we have the HD50, which was sort of the big option for a while. There's a few newer things out since this has been around. We'll sort of talk over why I use these two and some things I run with them to make it work well. HD50, it's pretty big, right? But the beauty of it is it's multi-purpose. So I run everything from rimfire to 50 cals, doesn't matter. The beauty of it being the big wide stance that you get with the legs extended. Now this isn't always long enough, and we'll touch on these extenders here in a minute. But for most cases, especially sort of unless you're in the mountains, this is pretty awesome for everything. The downside being it's big and it can get in the way, and then occasionally the footprint is too wide for certain width props or the like. So works for nearly everything, but not always. And so that's why I end up getting an FD4, which is like a smaller sort of PRS orientated model. And one of the beauties about this, it's got the quick deploy leg. So hard to see there, but most Accu-TACs you have to pull it out and down. This one you can just pull it down on that first notch, and you got to pull it out and up to get it up. But it's just a quick deploy essentially, and you can get it to where you need it. So I don't use this one as much as the HD50, but in certain scenarios or on smaller guns, I'll definitely use that. And then, like I said, one of the beauties of the HD50 is it's quite big, and it's, well, I don't know the weight, but it's reasonably heavy. So on lighter guns where you need a bit of muzzle forward weight, you can run this and you will get a bit more balance on the rifle. All Accu-TACs have the sort of standard sort of pivot point here for leveling the gun out to suit the terrain or prop you're on, and then they just shut. This a bit loose at the moment with a little turn there, and that locks that up. They also come with a Picatinny head too, or an Arca, depending on what you want. Nearly everything we run now is Arca, so they've all got Arca heads on them. And same thing, to deploy these, this doesn't have the quick down, you have to pull the leg out and then down. The HD50 does not have the 45-degree option in the leg, and the FD4 somewhat has it. So if you run it the proper way, which is this way in your gun, barrel going that way, it doesn't have a 45. But if you really do need one, you can turn the bipod around and run it into the back 45 slot there. So there is a 45 option, it's just it's only there if you need it. Because if it did have a 45, you wouldn't be able to do the quick deploy legs. So it's got a few little features hidden about it like that. And then obviously very similar for leveling the head out here, just twist to that. And then you can tighten this to whatever you want, whether you want a little bit of retention or you want it to be loose and floppy and etc. As I mentioned in this one, not very long legs. Without measuring them, they're about, I don't know, 250 millimeters, 10 inches long when deployed, and then another 1.5 inches for the head height to the Arca. But still, it's for shooting sort of modified prone or off sideways steps and stuff like that, or if I just want a little bit less weight but a bipod. As I mentioned before with HD50, I occasionally run out of height, and normally if I'm on a slope that's downward facing and my target is up on the side of a large ridge or what some people might call a mountain, you can actually buy a similar thing from Accu-TAC, but I just got some made by my machinist. So it's just essentially a leg extension. So it screws on like so, and then you just put the foot that you took off the original leg, and now I've got a super long leg. So if I'm shooting a match where I'm going to run out of bipod height and I don't want to have to compromise too much, I can put these on, and now I've got a leg that is keep it shot that long. So they just essentially live in my shooting backpack. So if I need them, they're there, but I don't run them on the bipods if they're not needed, because obviously the bipod becomes too long and a little bit unusable. But yeah, nice and simple. Just a little extension. Again, I'm fairly certain Accu-TAC actually make extensions for that, so you can buy them if you need them. Green paint's just because a friend of mine was using it and he set it to he'd have a quick deploy height. I also have an SR5 model, which is slightly different again, somewhat in between. But that's at a friend's house at the moment. Nice and simple, retracts. So yeah, as you can see, they're well machined, all made in the US, so you know it's all done well. Nice and chunky. As you can tell, this one's been used a lot. I've had it about 3 years. Scratches and that to be expected, but no problems. Every once in a while I'll put a little bit of lubricant here where these pull out, you know, because over time they'll get a little bit slow, but nothing major. And then obviously the Arca clamp, you just every once in a while give that a little bit of a grease, and no real complaints. HD50, excellent choice. Again, it's big. You probably don't need one that big. And then if you're shooting on flat ranges, like especially like the Australian guys who shoot at like square ranges, these ones are going to be the go. Quick deploy legs. You don't need the overly long legs because your targets generally aren't on big angles like here in New Zealand, and that's where the FD4 comes in handy. There's a whole plethora of different models available from Accu-TAC via Guns NZ here in New Zealand, who are a fantastic supporter of what I do. And then there's other accessories like here. As you can tell, it's faded because I never really use them, but we've got some spiked feet. Same thing, you just turn the rubber off, poke these on. To be honest, I'm not a huge fan of spiked accessories on, that's too tight, on bipods, mainly because as I'm walking around I end up jabbing myself with them. As you can imagine, it's quite a point, so that goes on exactly the same as the extension I showed earlier. And I mean, this is going to be helpful if you're shooting in, I don't know, areas where you're likely to slip. Better car bonnet or something, but rubber's probably going to be better in most cases as a rule, but these are definitely an option if you want a big spike, if you've really got to dig into what you're doing. So again, I don't really run them, that's why they just sit in the box, but there's a whole bunch of claw, spike, and there's also sled options too for the guys shooting the big magnums for ELR, where you want a sled, where you want your bipod to slide back nicely. So yep, that's the HD50, like I said, my primary bipod, and that is my backup bipod, and then the legs, and that's essentially what I'll take to a to be at a PRS match or a Spark or a PRS Rimfire match or anything like that. Actually, at the World Champs and the IPRF World Champs, I ran the FD4 mainly because I was slightly conscious of weight getting over there, and I wasn't anticipating a lot of prone, which we did not have anyway. So I wasn't too worried about the HD50 going all the way to England, but so the smaller quick deploy was the one I chose. Yeah, we're pretty lucky with bipods nowadays. There's heaps of options. We used to just run Harris's and the like, and things have certainly come a long way. I'm just looking to see if I can find one of my Harris's. Here's a knockoff Harris. I've also got one with an Arca attachment somewhere. Don't know where, but yeah. So these have a place, but I certainly, as it falls to bits, these have a place, but I certainly think there's much better options now. But you do pay a premium. Like an original Harris will cost you 250 Kiwi, whereas an HD50's upwards of $1,000. So, and then they're in between for the different models. But look what you're getting. Yeah, that's just my sort of quick take on the two bipods I run. I hope that's helpful. Yeah, and like I said, if you're here in New Zealand and you want to get one or another, either go on the Guns NZ website, www.gunsnz.co.nz, or just their Facebook or ring them or something. They have a bunch of options. They'll also be able to tell you a lot there about them too. And then if you have any questions for me, just send a PM in regards to these or comment on the video.